Hello everyone, welcome to Craft and Images. My name is Sona Arosh, and today we are here with another exciting episode of In Conversation with Future Leaders, powered by The Strategist. So today we have with us Mr. Rahul Vasu, who is a very passionate business development professional with over 20 years of experience in various domains like high impact leadership, human capital evolution, business development, etc. So let's welcome Mr. Rahul Vasu.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How is everything
Uh,
going around you?
See, the work has not changed. The work is going on at the same pace. Unfortunately, I cannot talk in detail about the project because it's still not announced to the public.
It's okay. It's
But
okay.
we had our launch planned in October last year, and now it's delayed.
Okay.
So everything has to be now rewired. But
Okay.
work-wise, the space is same. The working hours have increased.
Okay.
So work from home, I think people think कि घर पे ही तो है. So I
But it
mean,
is more difficult, I think.
it is more difficult. It is more difficult because earlier you could shut down your system by 7:38 and relax, but come back home. But now it's like 10, 11. You're still working.
Yeah.
So
There's
yeah,
no
new
time
world, new
now.
experiences. Yeah, new world, new experiences. Yes.
Yeah. You have over 20 years of experience in this field. Tell us about how the journey all through these years have been, the ups and
Uh,
downs, everything.
mhm. Okay. So that's quite a journey, isn't it? I mean, it has been a learning journey, right? If I can summarize it in one sentence, it has been a constantly learning and unlearning journey, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Especially, I think I have been fortunate to sit on both sides of the table, which means I have been a consultant to the brands and I have been a brand, right,
Okay.
at the brand's end, right? So
Okay.
from the brand's table and from a consultant's table. So I've seen this world evolve, or this ecosystem evolve from both sides of the table.
Okay.
And with the continuous evolvement of this space, right? I mean, retail in 2006 and retail now is hell and heaven, right? I mean, nobody that time thought that e-com was possible, right?
Mhm.
Though I don't know, many of you youngsters might not know that we still had an e-com company in 2006. It was called India Plaza. I think they shut down, but nobody actually took them as a threat, right? I mean, nobody thought that people would actually buy online,
Okay.
right? And now then e-commerce happened, right?
Mhm.
And then every retailer started, so it's like you had, now you'll have to understand retail is a very capital heavy business, right? Now,
Mhm.
if you have to change POS systems for, say, 3,000 odd retail stores, it costs a bomb, right? And now, if you have to quickly, and that's, I feel, has been the e-com's backbone because they could quickly flip, they could quickly
Mhm.
change direction. Uh, uh, and like Bill Dowsey said, right, can elephants dance? That's the problem with retail, right? If you have to change retail, brick and mortar retail, it costs a lot of money, and none of these unfortunately were profit making till very recently a chain went profitable. So the journey has been immense. I have seen the consumer behavior change, right? The right from If we were to limit my points about only about loyalty, right, it was a transaction driven business wherein you drove transactions and you thought it culminated into loyalty, which was, if I may use the word bribe, right? I mean, you were bribing the customer to shop with you, right? Now it has completely transformed itself into an engagement driven program, which culminates into loyalty, right?
Mhm.
And earlier, the perception was that loyalty was the anchor, and if you have a strong loyalty program, you get a lot of customers. uh, Today it's the brand that is the anchor, right? Just because you have a world class loyalty program and you give bad experience to the customer, nobody's going to return, right? Just
Right.
because you have a good loyalty program, nobody's going to come to you. So the
Right.
brand has become the anchor, the customer experience has become the anchor. From if I may, this is what I sell, you got to buy this, to what is it that you want, I'm ready to sell that, right?
Yeah.
So I have seen that transformation happen across the industry. Um, the power of data, right? Uh, 10 years ago, if you walked into any boardroom and asked them, why do you want a loyalty program? They would all look at you and say data, right? We want customer data, right? Today,
Hmm.
that problem is solved. There are millions of ways to get customer data. Today, you want a loyalty program, you need to have a clear-cut objective. And, trust me, I say no to brands and they don't feel nice about it when they come to me saying they want a loyalty program. And I say, no, you don't need a loyalty, right? And because I feel, you shouldn't have a loyalty program just because you want to have one. The times have changed. Today, you want to have a clear-cut objective to have a loyalty program. That whole definition of I need a loyalty program because I wanted data is long gone. It's long gone. It's a problem
Yeah.
long solved. So yes, the journey has been exciting. From running loyalty through individual kiosks, and I still have a toolbox, by the way. This is a very interesting story. So I was with an organization, and we were introducing real time vouchers, and the only way to dispose them was put kiosks in the store. So we
Okay.
put some kiosks in the store, and unfortunately the IT signed up for a 2-day SLA in case the kiosk goes wrong. But in a store, if there is an asset, it has to work. If it doesn't work, the store doesn't like it, right? So the
Right.
store used to call saying the kiosk is not working. So I actually went and trained myself in SLA, and I had a toolbox. So every time the store used to call, the kiosk is not working, I used to go running with the toolbox, sit on the floor in midst of a 2,000, 3,000 square foot store where people are shopping around me and fix the kiosk. So
Okay.
from there to now people are talking mobile only loyalty programs to engagement driven, give me opportunities to earn and burn beyond your ecosystem. So yes, I've seen the transformation. I think I've been lucky enough to be part of that wave. So I saw industry pre-ecom, I saw during the launch of ecom, and I'm seeing it today.
Right.
So yes, it has been an exciting journey.
Ancient philosophers have predicted that 2021 will be even worse. There will be
Wow.
even difficult situations like famines would be happening, and even other kind of diseases are coming. Okay, so what is your take on that? What do you have to say
See,
about
I think 2021, 2020 should be treated as a wake-up call for humanity, right? I mean, it was a time when nature asked us to stop and rethink about our priorities, right? It was work and what is that fancy car I'm driving and where am I living? And, at least in Bombay, you're aware, where do you live is the most important thing in the high table, right?
it?
But today, if I talk to anybody, their first concern is about health, about family,
Hmm.
about being well, about and and then the list follows, right? The car, the building, this place I stay, etc., 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 right?
Right.
So I think 2020 for me should be treated as a wake-up call to humanity to actually put a stop and look back at what the priorities in life are from a
Hmm.
business point of view, right? From a business point of view, 2020 is a reminder that you have to be flexible.
Hmm.
It gone are the days when you had a family tradition flowing into business, running into decades, right? I mean, you have to be flexible and you have to be agile. You have to
Hmm.
be agile to change course. You have to be agile to adapt, right?
Right.
I mean, some of the biggest critics of e-com in brick and mortar retail today are talking about online. They
Right.
are talking about how do we take our businesses online. You had time to do that. You didn't do it. The
Right.
pandemic made you do it, right?
Right.
Now, so my take is on the personal front. You should really think about, prioritize about your health, your family, your well-being, your family's well-being. On the professional front, I think on the business front, I mean, businesses has to be agile, more adapting, and more
Hmm.
humane. More humane. I mean, you have to. I think the time is now ripe, and I have been talking about it for years that you have to stop treating your customers as one more entry in that Excel sheet. You have to treat him like a human being, right?
Right.
And so I think that's the key. I mean, these are things that we cannot control, right? I mean,
Hmm.
these are things that even insurance companies don't control, right? They call it the
Right.
act of God, right? So now we have to realize that some of these things are beyond our control and make ourselves adaptable to the change and agile enough to adapt. Yeah.
Okay. So, what is the best part about your job?
Okay, so it has to be data, right? Data. I'm in love with data, right? I love data. I like interpreting data, right? And I'm a strong believer of the fact that if you torture data enough, it will agree to whatever you want it to agree,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, having a sense of responsibility when you look at data, having to develop what I call a data sense is very important. And I think I have the data sense, and that's what keeps me hooked, right?
Okay.
And today you are actually creating a customer profile, and you're today actually working a statistical model to get your next 100 customers, and
Mm-hmm.
that's fascinating, isn't it? I mean,
Right.
yesterday you had this big billboards across the road, you had this you know heavy spends on ATLs, and today I'm telling you that I will work a statistical model which will get you your next most valued 100 customers,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it is fascinating, and I think it's data and the way loyalty has transformed. And I have been fortunate. I mean, when I look back today while speaking to you, it's like fascinating. So you have industries where loyalty means gifting gold,
Hmm.
right? And they have huge budgets. I mean, they have budgets ranging from 300 crores to 400 crores per year. And
Hmm.
all they do is gift gold, right? And to their dealers basically. And I participated in one of their loyalty events just to understand what goes on there, and they actually made a gold crown, and they crowned the guy who was the highest selling dealer of the year.
Okay.
And they wanted me to create a loyalty program in that ecosystem, right?
Okay.
So see, I have seen industries where, like FMCG, right? I did some work with P&G and J&J, and their dealer program is completely different. So now a shopkeeper is part of a loyalty program, but what he wants in rewards is not points or TV or refrigerator, but he wants, say, buckets, a pack of pens, stuff that he can sell off his store, right, and
Hmm.
make money.
Yeah.
So I have seen it across industries, and the way each industry is different, and the same customer is different when he's dealing with different industries,
Hmm.
right?
Right. Right.
The way you behave with your milkman is not the way you behave with your banker, and not the way you behave with your retail store, and not the way you behave with your fashion designer,
Exactly.
right? You're the
Right.
same customer. You're the same
Hmm.
customer. You would want a discount from the sabjiwala at the market. You would not expect that from H&M,
Right.
right? So
Correct.
you're the same customer, right? And that is the key, and that's what makes it so fascinating, that a single individual behaves differently in different ecosystems.
Right.
So that's what I love the most. I like reading data
Okay.
to learn about what the customers are doing and what is it that they want. And if you ask me, frankly, the data tells you everything, right?
Hmm.
It gives you at least a 90% sense of what your customer is wanting. So, and then creating something to wow the customer, it's a wonderful feeling.
Okay. And maybe that is because the loyalty programs or all these things are designed according to the customer. Like it is based on the psychology of the customer. That is how they design,
So
right?
there is a very strong school of thought which says that your customer doesn't know what he wants. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So you will have to keep in your mind that problem, right? Now, let me tell you something. You ask 10 different customers as to what their expectation is, you would come up with at least 7 different answers,
Okay.
right? And it becomes really difficult to create a program out of 7 different answers, right?
Okay.
So what you do is you find a middle ground, and then
Hmm.
you customize. Like I said, you will have to step away from treating the customer as part of the exception. Like
Hmm.
you as an individual might like a different flavor of ice cream than I do, right?
Right.
You as an individual might have a different point of view than I do, right?
Right.
As a loyalty program, you should be flexible and agile enough to accommodate both.
Right.
And that is the key. That is the
Right.
key, right? So what we do is we create uh, something called a 3:3:3 cube, right? And what it basically means is I bracket you into 27 different profiles, right? So you could be a fashionista,
Hmm.
but you are not a trendsetter,
Hmm.
and you are socially aware, but you prefer offline retail,
Okay.
right? So these are your preambles which I connect together and give you a customer persona. And
Right.
then I design how loyalty behaves with you depending on your persona. So
Okay.
then each customer feels that it has been customized for me. But that's not the case. It's impossible to customize it for the customer, right?
Right.
What you can do is personalize,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when I mean personalize, you talk about customer personas. And this will happen only if you know your customer well.
Mm-hmm.
Let me cite you an example, right? And where people go wrong. Now, you know that a person is filling fuel for, say, 30,000 rupees a month. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the data says 30,000 rupees per month for fuel, which means he drives a high-end car because the car averages less, right? Which means he must own a very high-end mobile, which means he's an HNI.
Mm-hmm.
Now, step on to the other side. What if he is a taxi driver,
Right.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
understanding the data, getting your customer personas right, and then personalizing your program to make each customer feel that it is his or her program is the key.
Okay. Right. And when you have n number of customers with different kinds of characteristics, like different kinds of ways in which they behave. So how do you personalize, like how do you make these personas?
Okay, so you will be amazed to know how similar we are, right? I mean, in terms of the population, right? In terms of it basically depends on the industry that you're targeting, right? So if you're building a loyalty program for a luxury retailer, right? Say tomorrow I build a program for Louis Vuitton, right? Louis Vuitton's expectation is not that 100 customers come to my store, right?
Mm-hmm.
Louis Vuitton's expectation is, two customers come to my store and they buy. They
Right.
can afford Louis Vuitton, right?
Right.
A guy who's buying a 3 lakh worth of laptop bag is not looking at 500 rupees ka discount or 200 points,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah,
His
right.
expectation is personalization. He should be greeted as Mr. X on the door. His expectation is, engagement. How does Louis Vuitton engage with him and work with around his persona, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is Louis Vuitton offering him in terms of in-store experience? How has he been dealt with, right?
Mm-hmm.
How has Louis Vuitton agreed to the modifications he has asked for,
Mm-hmm.
right? Similarly, take the same example to a discount retailer, right? Somebody like a D-Mart or a Big Bazaar or somebody like a grocery retailer.
Mm-hmm.
There, the key is get 1,000 people to the store,
Right.
right?
Right.
If today I've got 1,000, get 2,000 to the store,
Right.
right? I don't care they buy Louis Vuitton or they buy Bata, just get them,
Right.
right? So then your personas change.
Hmm.
Now, if I were to profile you, Sona, for two different programs, my characteristics I use for the Louis Vuitton program for you would be different than when I use your characteristics for a grocery retail,
Right.
right? So the characteristics depends on the industry. We use multiple. There is no thumb of rule, but generally we have 6 to 8 broad customer personas and then subsets.
Like you started building loyalty programs in 2008, as far as I know about your LinkedIn profile. Like you were working with Sodexo. And till now, like 2021, how has the market reacted to these loyalty programs over all these years? And how has loyalty programs evolved over all these years?
Okay, so how has the market reacted? The market, loyalty program when I started was very niche. I mean, we used to spend 3 initial meetings trying to explain what loyalty was,
Mm-hmm.
right? And why does the organization need it? And Sodexo was a consultant side of a business, right? So we used to approach brands to run loyalty programs for them.
Mm-hmm.
So the first 3 meetings, we have to get the whole room around understanding what loyalty was and how is it going to help. Because for them, it was additional expense. I mean, they would say, yeah, I'm spending crores on ATL, I'm spending on billboards, I'm spending on BTL, I'm doing PR. Why would I need loyalty, right? And then, building a case for them. And what happened was in 2006, data was very, very, very less. You really didn't know what was happening in the industry. So when we were building a program in Sodexo for the cement industry, I traveled, at least 27 districts in the 3 southern states, right?
Okay.
I actually physically traveled, spoke to the dealers, understood how the program runs, what happens, why are they interested, and cement is, by the way, the industry where they gift gold. Okay, so
Okay.
I traveled through 3 states, and then I tried to understand what are the pain points, right? I mean, the biggest pain point in gifting gold is logistics. At least at that time it was logistics, right? How do you transport gold, right?
Right.
So we had cement companies hire a cash van. You know what a cash van is, right? The van that fills ATMs,
Right.
a similar looking van, and they used to transport gold into 3 states.
Okay.
And this used to take months and
Okay.
cost lakhs, right?
Right.
And we said, and then we got, and this is before we approached the first company, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then we approached the first company and said, I am here to take away 50 lakh of your expenses from your loyalty,
Okay.
right? And that's how we started. Today, I have trouble keeping people off loyalty programs, right? Because everybody understands loyalty nowadays,
Right.
right? So, but today, the only difference I see largely written is from a transaction driven loyalty, like, uh, you buy from me, I'll give you something, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you buy from me more, I'll give you more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Has transformed into an engagement driven program, right? Today, the only successful programs that you would see around are programs who have made that transformation from a transaction driven relationship to an engagement driven relationship, right? Today, you are engaging the customer, you are taking care of his needs and making the customer that he's valued, and the customer is turning loyal.
Okay.
The points, the freebies, the benefits are in the back end now. They are okay. I mean, they're part of the deal, but they are not your core objective. Today, every successful loyalty program has a core objective of engaging with the customer. And it started with, I think, now defunct Kingfisher Airlines, right? I don't know if you were old enough to travel Kingfisher Airlines, or have you traveled at Kingfisher Airlines?
No, no, I have not.
Yeah, I have trouble explaining this to youngsters like you, right? So we had something called Deccan Aviation. Have you
Yeah.
heard of it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know that you had to run to catch your seat?
No.
Uh, so they didn't allocate any seats, right, to the customer. They were an actual no frills airline, right? They didn't give you even a glass of water, right?
Okay.
You want to fly, we'll fly you, and we'll fly you at 1/3 the cost of other airlines. Okay,
Okay.
but no frills. So you got down from the bus at the airport, and you would see people running to catch a seat.
Okay.
If you want a window seat, you have to climb the bus at the last, because that's when you get out first, right?
Right.
So people used to use all kinds of combinations. And then Kingfisher Airlines came in. They changed the whole ecosystem, right? They defined luxury, right? So if you are a loyalty member, and I'm talking about 2007, 2008, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're a loyalty member traveling on Kingfisher. The air hostess comes with the food, and she says, sir, your food, sir, your food. And Mr. Rahul, here's your food. We are delighted to have you back. That changed the whole perception. That's how, then, if I were to brave enough to say that, that's how even Jet Miles changed, right? Even Jet Miles today is the only successful program I see in the airline business, but Jet Miles transformed after Kingfisher came into the play, right?
Okay.
Because Kingfisher redefined how people flew.
Hmm.
It was really luxury in the sky, right? And then the transformation started. Then people started realizing that if I am a loyalty member, I should expect more.
Hmm.
Yes, I'm spending at your store. Yes, you're giving me some pennies as points, but what is the engagement that you're driving with,
Right.
right? And now it has completed. So today I'm building a loyalty program that should get approved. So uh, it is completely engagement driven, right? It is futuristic. It is
Okay.
talking about how can I actually make sense in the everyday life of the customer without him having to transact or talk to me every day, right?
Okay.
Say if you were to get rewarded for the regular things that you do, like going to college, going to work, meeting friends, getting a coffee, dining out, driving around, filling fuel. So I have a subtle presence in your life without interfering in your life. I'm only enabling your life far more smoother and making it rewarding that you go ahead with your daily activities, right?
Okay.
So today, the programs are of future.
Okay.
You're talking about the futuristic program. This is how loyalty program would be, wherein the loyalty program would engage in a customer and would invest in a customer in such a way that the customer turns loyal and not the other way around.
Okay. Okay. With that, can you give me an example of these like engagement-driven loyalty program in the retail industry, like e-commerce retail, if you say?
See, e-commerce doesn't have a loyalty program, right?
Okay.
The ones that have tried have not taken off, right?
Okay.
It's because of the simple reason that apart from Prime, but Prime it cannot be classified as a loyalty program. It's more or less and everything else, right? It's a lot of things. It's not just a loyalty program. Uh, Primary, the reason is e-commerce. I still believe is in acquisition stage, right? So when you started, you had 100 orders. Out of that, 90 came from Bangalore because Bangalore was IT enabled much higher than other cities in India. And people, generally anything related to e-com or IT, people in Bangalore tend to be early adopters of the system, right? So Bangalore used to account for 90% of the orders. Then it so happened that it spread to other metros, and then now you are going into tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities. And now if you look ticket wise, a guy in Bangalore is only ordering a t-shirt, while a guy in Almora in Uttar Pradesh is ordering a double door fridge, right? So the average ticket size of the customer has gone up in the tier 4 city, right? Because they are buying aspirational items, and people in cities are buying necessities, right?
Okay.
So that's how it is. So ecom loyalty has not taken off yet.
Okay.
It will be good to see how Mintra does or how Flipkart does with its loyalty program. But as of now, if you keep aside Prime for a while, I don't think e-commerce as an example of a successful loyalty program.
Okay.
However, retailers, right? Retailers, I think the most successful and the pioneers of loyalty program in India was Shopper Stop, right? They started their program first in India, right? And they, for I think um, till a couple of years back, it was considered a very good program, right? I mean, it still is, but people used to go crazy for their black card and stuff and the kind of goodies that you get with the Shopper Stop program.
Mhm.
And then in between came a deluge of programs, right? The adaptations started happening, and it was all transaction driven.
Okay.
Shopper Stop, interestingly, had a makeover, a personal makeover. They had, people at the store who would tell you about your personality, who would tell you about what kind of wardrobe would suit you, much earlier than people are thinking about it today, right?
Mhm.
So today, if you look at India is yet to evolve into a completely engagement-driven program. I do not have a program that I can cite, but worldwide you have multiple programs which is completely engagement-driven. Right now, let me tell you about a category. It's hair color. Right?
Okay.
Can you think of a hair color company having a loyalty program? I mean, it's unthinkable, right? But it does. There is a company in US which runs a loyalty program, and it runs a chatbot-based loyalty program which is on hair color. So what essentially happens is when you go to the chatbot actually takes a picture of yours and shows you pictures of yourself in different hair colors
Yeah,
and shades. Yeah, and then
I've seen this example. Yeah.
yes. So based on that, it suggests you which salon
Oh,
and it books you an appointment,
right.
right? So
Okay.
it's evolving, right? It's completely engagement driven. I mean, today I think as youngsters, one of the most important questions we have is, what hair color would suit me, or what look would suit me. I'm imagining that's the case
Right.
because that was the case when I was young. So,
Okay.
so yeah. So today, the need is to have such a program, right? And I'm sure organizations in India are evolving, and especially due to this COVID thing, many organizations would now switch to a very strong engagement driven program rather than having a transaction.
Yeah, you have actually answered my another question, which where I was about to ask you this, that how is this transactional to engagement driven is going to happen, and what is the example of, as we already know that COVID-19 impacted a lot of businesses, like everyone is facing a downfall. Okay, but e-commerce is a place where which has actually accelerated the growth. Like the people have started shopping more. And why I can say this is because there is an example, now a research from Bain and Company, which says that around 3,000 people they have surveyed, and they're seeing that more than 13% people are have started actually buying online, who did not buy online previously, and more than 40% people have started shopping more online. So, can you tell me, like, what is your take on that, and how has loyalty programs helped in that? Like, is there any a role of loyalty programs in this?
Okay, so let me cite you some real-time examples quoting the same research. Whenever you read this research, I have nothing against them, but you should also read them in depth. Okay, so now you say this 13% growth in online sales, which was the category that grew, right? The category that grew was electronics. Why did electronics grow? Because people were forced to work from home. People were buying mobiles, people were buying tablets, people were buying laptops. It was a necessity, right? So
Okay.
that essentially doesn't mean that the industry grew,
Okay.
right? The category grew. The
Okay.
category grew because it had become a necessity,
Okay.
right? So people, online classes for students, right? Many of them didn't have smartphones. Many of them, many of the parents didn't have an extra laptop, because if you have to work from home on your laptop, you cannot allow your kid to attend classes on the same laptop,
Right.
right? So you needed an extra laptop, right? So
Right.
most of these purchases happened there. The consumption increased, of course it increased. You have to think from a very practical way, right? What is the food pattern of yours, of not yours per se, I mean for a working couple, in normal circumstances? So generally, if I cite mine, we grab breakfast sometimes of the week at home, and we head out to work.
Right.
Lunch is always outside, and dinner is back at home, right?
Right.
If I'm not working late, right? So
Right.
now I'm at home. I'm having 3 meals a day at home. The
Right.
consumption has to increase,
Right.
right? The
Right.
consumption has to increase. So these reports are, in a way, yes, they are a big a mirror of what's actually happening in the market, but you'll have to take it with a pinch of salt, right? I mean, yes, I mean, there are practical reasons for that happening. Today, if all the offices start working, my consumption would go low again. It's
Right.
not because I've stopped eating. It's
Right.
because I'm not eating at home, right?
Right.
It's like, I always tell people that, when I was with a grocery retailer, people used to come to me and say, how do we make customers buy more? And I used to tell them, boss, see, food is inelastic, right? I mean, just because you earn more, you don't eat more. You eat the same quantity,
Right.
right? You Just because the customer's salary has gone up, he's not going to buy 20 kgs rice instead of 10,
Right. Of course.
right?
Right.
So yes, so like you said, the the transformation, right? The transformation is that today you will have to understand that all businesses will have got a root shop, that they have to be agile.
Right.
Okay, it's not that they don't have to have fancy showrooms anymore, but it also means that you have to be available on alternate channels,
Right.
right? You have to be business ready. You have to change as per the customer's needs,
Right.
right? So in the loyalty space, right, I will cite you a very beautiful example. And this is a program, there's a coalition program that operates in India called Payback. Some of the things that they did during the pandemic was beautiful, right? I mean, they said the customers can opt to redeem their points for online education. Okay. They said the customers can redeem points for health checkups. right?
Mm-hmm.
They said the customers can, utilize their points to pay for their children's education.
Okay.
Now, these things during the pandemic helped them keep or drive engagement with their customers when the actual on-ground transactions were off,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
This is a simple example of innovation, right? It cost them nothing. It
Right.
just took a partnership guy, put in a little effort to run some partnerships, right?
Right.
But it completely changed the way the customer looked at the program,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Right.
now organizations or loyalty programs will have to devise a way wherein they have avenues of connecting with the customer even outside your ecosystem,
Right.
right? So like I cite, on one side you have a program like an airline program. So what is an airline program, right? It's, if you fly, we give you miles, and that miles you can use to redeem for more
Right.
tickets, right? Would you book a flight ticket just to use the loyalty program?
No.
No, right? You would use
No.
the loyalty program if you are flying,
Right. Exactly.
right? So
Right.
the loyalty program is non-interfering. It's an enabler on the side, right?
Okay.
Vis-a-vis a program, let's say a program which is rewarding you on irrespective of what you're doing, right? So you're filling fuel, it's rewarding you. If you're flying, it's rewarding you. You're doing this, it's rewarding you. It's become part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So here you use the program only when you are required to fly,
Yeah.
right? Though I know people who did the other way around with some of the mile programs, uh, and they just flew not to lose their tier.
Okay.
And here you are doing your normal stuff, but it's getting rewarding for you. The program is working in the background. It's become part of your life, and
Okay.
necessarily don't necessarily have to be a coalition program. It could be a partnerships driven program.
Mm-hmm.
What if I remove the whole transactional element from the program today, right? I mean, I don't talk about transaction. I talk about benefits. As a, say, if say tomorrow a movie chain, right? Say a movie theater chain, were to tell you that you know what, since you have been watching movies with us, um, every time there's a new movie that comes in, we will give you an early access to tickets. Now, what does that mean cost wise? Nothing.
Yeah.
I just have to open the link a day earlier for
Right.
some people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
But for the customer, it's a feeling which says that, oh, they value me.
Yeah.
They want to ensure that I get the best tickets.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that is where we are heading. And companies will have to marry offline and online and have a huge presence there,
Right.
right? That,
Yeah.
according to me, is the future.
Okay. Yeah. Great. So let's move to the next question. Okay. So okay, you have designed a lot of loyalty programs for a lot of your clients. Okay. So what are the
Mhm.
key factors that you keep in mind while designing a loyalty program?
Okay. I think I recently wrote an article also on this for crafting images.
Yes.
Uh, so
We
the
just want you
first
to
and
elaborate that.
yeah,
And
sure. So first and foremost is, my first reaction is no. Okay, so whenever a brand comes to me to say that we need a loyalty program, I say no, you don't need a loyalty program. Why do you need a loyalty program? And I want them to tell me their objective,
Mhm.
right? You need to have an objective to have a loyalty program. You just cannot have a loyalty program. You need to have a clear objective. What is it that you want to achieve out of this program, right?
Mhm.
Are you trying to get customer data? Because that problem is solved, like I said.
Right.
You don't no longer have that problem, right? You customer data can be got through multiple means. What do you want to do with this data? So, like, the objective of a loyalty program for a bank is very different from a grocery store, is very different from the cement industry, is very different from for the insurance industry, right? For the bank, it is, I'm not going to say it aloud, but the objective is different, right? The objective is completely different to have a loyalty program at a bank, right? So you will have to get your objective right.
Isn't the objective is always to get in more sales? for all
Uh,
these different businesses?
See, the end objective is always revenue, right?
Right.
End objective is always revenue, but do you know that almost all the performing arts theater in the world have loyalty programs, and most of them are not for profit.
Okay.
So why do you think they have loyalty programs, right? Because the engagement that you have, the sense of belongingness that you want to create with a space like that, you need a loyalty program, right?
Okay.
And it's not transactional at all. It none of the programs, if you do a little research about the Met or the New York Art Gallery or anybody, right? They all have programs, but none of them is transactional. None of them
Mhm.
says you buy so many tickets, I'll give you so many points which you can discount. Nothing. It's just come attend workshops with us, come be part of the community service. So then what happens is the customer then grows into Met, right? If you meet customers from, or the patrons as they like to call them, patrons from Met, they are Met, right? They are not patrons of Met, they are Met. They
Hmm.
think like Met, right? They want to contribute, they want to be seen as one of the patrons of Met, right? So that's not the objective always. I just wanted to drive that point, right?
Okay.
Depending on the industry. But yes, the type of industries that we are having in this conversation, the end objective is always revenue, but revenue can be earned through multiple means. If I were to spend 300 crores in ATL, I can I can be earn multiple crores in revenues, right? Uh, like with the example of a recent ed education website, right? They're everywhere, and I'm sure they're getting signups right across the country, right? But that's ATL. That's the power of ATL. You don't need a loyalty program. See, that is the problem why most of the loyalty programs fail, because you at some point somebody decided to have a loyalty program, they created a wonderful program and then forgot about it, right?
Okay.
It's still running. It's well past its date, but it's still running, right?
Mhm.
So with a loyalty program, you have to have your objective right. That is the first part. What is it that you want to achieve? Endpoint, like you rightly mentioned, is revenue. But why the loyalty program? Revenue can be earned through multiple ways, right? Two, I always suggest do benchmarking. Okay,
Okay.
look at the world, see what is happening in your industry, right? How are the programs doing? Just because you like Starbucks program, you cannot implement it into a salon business, right?
Right.
It just won't make sense. I
Right.
mean, I like the Starbucks program, so I emulated that same program into the salon business. It will not make sense, right? So do benchmarking in your own industry as to what works, what doesn't work, then come up with a concept, right? Third, like I said, is customer. Look at the data, understand what your customer is doing, what are the pain points. Don't try and solve a problem which doesn't exist, right? Try and solve a problem which exists, right?
Mhm.
Third is your resources, your infrastructure, right? Does your IT support it? Do you have the right kind of resources to run this program? Do you have the right kind of technology to run a program? Do not go on designing a program which is not supported by the technology you have, right? And do not expect the companies to spend thousands of dollars to upgrade infrastructure for your program. Okay, they will
Right.
not. It's
Right.
foolishness, right? Third, resources. I always say the platform is not important. All platforms are same. Most important is the people who run this platform, right?
Mhm.
You have to invest in the right kind of talent, right? And people who are invested, who understand business. You cannot be running a loyalty program without actually understanding the business you are in, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
we used to run zone wise programs, right? And zone wise, when I say zone wise, so each zone has a couple of thousands of stores, right? And then we used to go store wise and understand which store had which gap. So we benchmark the stores in the zone, the top performing stores, and then we benchmark the rest among them. And we see what are the gaps. So some stores, it could be average ticket size, some space, it could be repeat, some store, it could be no new customers, no new acquisition is happening. And we used to devise campaigns individually for each store based on needs,
Okay.
right? So you will have to run. So that is very important, that you have resources who have their feet on their ground to think. The most important thing, cost. Okay. And implementation, right? So today, if you are offering hands-free shopping to a customer, check with the store manager if it is possible, because he's the guy who's going to run it, not you.
Right.
You will design a wonderful hands-free shopping. The customer will not find it when he reaches the store,
Right.
right? So, that, and the cost of your benefits. I have seen uh, some of the most luxurious programs, stopped giving benefits to their customers because they ran out of costs.
Okay.
Okay, they said, it's just too costly to run these benefits.
Okay.
So this is something you should have factored in before, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think these are the most important steps, and there are multiple experts better than me in the industry. They may have one or two, different points, but I think mostly these are the points. Uh, One more is, try and make your program self-reliant, right?
Okay.
Which means try at some point, 5 years, 6 years, whatever is the horizon, try and always see that your program is, an independent LOB which finances itself. Because God forbid, if you are in a condition like COVID again, the first thing that will get struck off of the P&L statement is a loyalty program, right? Because it's
Yeah.
an expense.
Right.
So always try and, figure out a way to make the program self-reliant.
Young professionals who want to start, who have started just now. So, what would you tell those people how to be successful, like, cope up with the ups and downs and how they should go about it?
See, the only two things that I tell youngsters today, and I meet quite a few of them. I go to colleges, I meet, youngsters who come as interns to work with me. And the only thing I always tell them is you need two things, right? One is resilience. Stick to what your beliefs are, right? And two is, keep learning, keep an open mind, right? In the beginning of my career, let's not look at my career, it's a disaster, right? I mean, I wouldn't want anybody to emulate my work path.
Okay.
But but at the beginning of your career, please do not think about the title, the kind of package. It doesn't make sense. I mean, you will, that's all will, it will happen on its own, right? I mean, at the beginning of the career, you should think about how much can I learn, right?
Yeah.
End of the day, you will be valued 10 years from now on what you know, not
Right.
by the, fanciness of your title, right?
Right.
Not, not by the package. I see
Mhm.
so many youngsters. We had a very funny incident. A youngster walked up to me from my team, actually a skip level reportee. He reports into somebody else, but he wanted to meet me, and he came and he said, "Sir, um, I'm an assistant manager." I said, "Okay." And can you make me manager? I said, why? He's like, I'm getting married, sir. I've told the girl's family I'm a manager. I'm like,
Okay. It's really funny.
so, at that age, you shouldn't be worried about it. I mean, manager, assistant manager, it doesn't matter. I mean, even today, some of the youngsters that I work with tell me, sir, there's this opportunity which gives me an opportunity to learn new things. And then there is this opportunity which gives me a higher designation. I always tell them to choose the first one, right? The designation will come. I mean, there is time. You're in this for a long haul. This is not a 3-year course. This
Right.
is not a 5-year diploma. This
Right.
is going to last you for 35, 36, and if you're lucky enough, 40 years, right?
Right.
40 years, you will have to do the same thing, right? Probably in a better way, but you will have to do the same thing, right? So all I ask the youngsters to do is resilience, hard work, and be open to learn. I tell today, I have no shame in admitting I try and learn a new thing every week. It must be technical, it must be, related to something else, but I try and learn a new thing every week, right? So that's what will help you grow. That's what will keep you level headed. And ups and downs, right? See, sometimes if you don't fail, right? I mean, if you don't fail, then that means that you're not trying anything new.
Right.
It's okay to fail. It's okay to fail and start again. I have started and restarted and restructured my career multiple times, right? Because see, I'm typically a small town boy, right? I came from a really, really remote part of India, right? And I didn't know. And I took some decisions in my career because I didn't know. But that's not the case today. Today, you have information available, you have mentors available, and I'm sure you will have some in your workplace, in your peer group, in your colleges, in the social groups that you have, right? Never feel shy to reach out, right? Never feel shy to reach out to someone who knows, right? Or someone you think can guide you. Always try to learn, always try to be resilient, and always be clear about what you want to do, right? It's not necessary that you will have the clarity. Some people are so blessed at 23, they know what they want to do in life, right? And there are people like me, if you ask me today, what do you want to do in life? I don't know. I really don't know what I want to do in life. I'm just chugging along the journey. I'm just enjoying the journey,
Yeah.
right? So either you're looking at the destination and not enjoying the journey, or you're enjoying the journey and you don't care about the destination.
Okay.
And you know that if you enjoy the journey, the destination is going to be fine, right? So
Yeah.
both are fine. I am not saying this one is wrong or that one is right. Both are fine. I am like this. Every individual is different, right? You may have, figured out what you want to be when you're 40, right? Uh, I don't. I don't know what I'm going to be when I'm 40. I'll be 40 next year, this year, I think. But yeah, so I don't know. Yeah. I mean, the people are saying, 40, you have to be young achiever and stuff. I don't know, yeah, if I'm that. But, both sides are fine. You have to relax, right? This is a life. Nobody is going to get out alive, right? So relax, whatever the path is. Just ensure that you have honesty, resilience, and openness to learn. Just keep these three values with you. You will do all right. If I can do all right, anybody can do all right. Trust me.
Yeah. It is just that you have to like go with the flow and keep learning.
Yeah, I mean, see, if you haven't figured out, right? See, there are some people who have figured out that in 10 years from now, I want to be head of marketing, right? So now they will plan their 10 years in such a way that they work sometime in all aspects of marketing, whether it is media buying, whether it is brand, whether it is PR, whether it is, ATL, BTL, whatever it is, right? Advertising, and then whether it is loyalty, they will ensure that their plan is to work in all the facets of marketing so that in 10 years from now, they are this able candidate who can be head of marketing, right? But there are some who have got a job and now they don't know what they want to be in 10 years. That's fine. I mean, you're working. So for me, I I don't know if you look deep enough into my LinkedIn profile. I actually was a chef,
Yeah, I
right?
know that.
I was a chef with Taj Mahal Hotel in Bombay, right? And then with Leela Palace in Bangalore. So I didn't know if I wanted to be a chef. I was a chef, right? But then, something came up. I took that. I tried and figured, what is this? Oh, I like doing this. And then I figured I like data. So then I transformed my journey into, so I didn't. So if you ask me, did you plan in 2004 that you wanted to be head of loyalty and analytics? No, I didn't. I didn't, I wouldn't even have imagined I would be that, right? But, I enjoyed the journey. The destination happened,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
It is all right if you know the destination and you plan your career, and it's perfectly fine if you don't have a destination and you start enjoying the journey. It's completely
Okay.
fine. Only thing
Great.
you will have to have is resilience, honesty, and openness to learn,
Yeah.
right?
You just now mentioned that you were a chef. Okay. Tell me about that interest of yours.
So I still cook. Okay.
Okay.
So I will tell you how I became a chef. This will give you more clarity as to how small town I was. Right. So I am the only fool, I think, who got through engineering and said no. Okay, I didn't want to become an engineer because it was too predictable, right? So I thought about what is it that I want to do with my life, right? And suddenly I got this feeling. I don't remember from where, but I got this impression that if I do a hotel management, I get to be a manager in a five-star hotel, and the day I pass out of college, they will give me a fancy cabin with a good-looking secretary. And so, here I was in a big city doing hotel management, and the realization soon dawned upon me that that's not going to happen, right? And the first day of the job, I was mopping the kitchen with a mop, right? So that's how it was. But cooking is a passion. Thanks to that course, I still cook, and nobody has died yet. So I consider myself a good cook. So
Okay, okay. So another thing that I've seen from your Twitter profile, that you call yourself a closet writer. Tell us
yeah.
about that passion of yours.
So I have three unfinished book drafts in my one of my folders somewhere. I like to write, and what you haven't gathered from my profile is I have worked for theater for long years. So I have been associated with performing arts theaters for long years, right? So I have done a lot of drama. I've done a lot of plays in Bangalore, and lot of involvement in the theater scene in Bangalore, right? So I used to write. I used to write plays. I used to write small skits, and we used to perform that on theater. So that ability has been there, and multiple times in my life, I have felt that I should write, and friends and family, in fact, always insist that I should write a book, and they think that I'm capable enough to write a book. So I have started. I have started thrice, and then midway through the book, I feel that who would pay to read me, right? And then I could think of only friends and family. So then I, somehow leave it. So I have unfinished drafts in some folder in my computer, but it's a passion that I think I've not pursued enough, and that's why I call myself a closet writer now. So
Okay,
yeah,
okay. Okay, so are you planning to finish those books?
I have started on a new one. I hope to finish it.
Okay. Okay, we hope to read those books of yours in some time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and okay, so my next question is, you even said, you mentioned in your Twitter that you are an unrecognized guitarist.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
tell us about that. If you were given a chance to be in a band where you are a lead guitarist and you're world famous, so would you leave your job and everything and would you go for that?
I might. I might. See, um, that is something that that I picked up real late in life, right? So I wasn't a guitarist when I was young. I picked it up post college, right? And out of the reason that I don't want to mention in this interview, but I picked up a guitar, out of college and not for learning it, and then it just sucked me into itself, right? And though in the last couple of years, the only thing I've played on the guitar are a couple of rhymes, uh, but yes, that is, if given an opportunity, I would like to pursue that and see how I do there, right? And
Yeah.
that's the primary intention as to, can I be a rock star? Yes, I would want to see that.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. We are sure that you can be.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Okay. So with that, let's finish off with the interview. It was great talking to you, and we've gained a lot of great information from you.
Okay, so the strategist, when Krishna spoke to me about it, I was really excited because uh, it's a platform that allows students to work on cases that are more real world, right? It is not designed by their professors. It is not thought about by some random management consultant. These are real problems. At least the case that I have submitted, I'm sure other professionals have also submitted real cases. These are real
Mhm.
cases. These are real problems that I want students to solve. Now, what
Mhm.
happens is, when you start working, right, you don't get the wheel. When you start to learn driving, you get the wheel figuratively, but the accelerator is with somebody else, right? So what happens is, as a youngster, you will be part of a team which will be handling the wheel, and you will be working parts of the wheel, right? It will take you a couple of years for you to be able to learn and to be handed over the complete wheel, right? This, I think, is an opportunity where we are saying, fine, you don't know to drive, but here's the wheel, drive,
Yeah.
right? Here's the wheel, drive. Think about it. This is a real life problem that we are looking to solution for, and I want you to put your minds together and find a solution. Now,
Hmm.
the only things that I want the students to keep in mind is, one, this is not a college project. Okay,
Hmm.
this is a real life corporate issue that we are trying to solve, right? So you have to think about it. When you are trying to solution, always solution with your mind on implementation. Your
Hmm.
solution should be implementable.
Hmm.
हवा में नहीं होना चाहिए, मतलब
Right.
it shouldn't be, something which is concept wise nice.
Hmm.
It should be implementable, and give it your all, because this will help you in your career to understand how a particular problem statement is looked at, how is it broken down into smaller pieces, and how is a complete story solution built around it, right? So break down the issue. The case would be one line or two lines or five lines, right? Break it down. Understand. If I am talking about, create a brand for the perfume, then you will have to think about what the perfume market is in India. Where do we stand? Why do we need a new perfume? And start from there, right? You think about the problem. You have to epitomize that problem, right? You have to understand why that problem exists. You have to go back in history. Why do you
Hmm.
need it? See, it's easier to build up, okay, build me a new phone, fine. Pick 10 features, put in one phone, here's the new phone, right? Why do we need the new phone? Where's the space for the new phone? That is important. Break it down, give it all you have got, and always keep it real. Okay, theory is fine, always keep it practical, because when we sit together to discuss the case with you, when we see your presentation, at least when I see the presentation made to me, I will want to know how can you implement each of the solutions that you're saying,
Right.
right? Tell me the real solution. So like I cited the example before, right before you promise the valet service, check with your ops guy if the driver is available,
Hmm.
right? So I would ask you on that. So this is a very good opportunity for young students to put their minds together and think like a team, as if this is a real job and this is a real problem, and how do we solution for it. It's all right if you're not right. In
Hmm.
marketing, there is nothing wrong or right? I mean, either you get it or you don't get it. Even the
Right.
best laid out plans fail, and even a extempore plan, becomes successful, right?
Hmm.
So it's okay if you do not get the solution 100%, 70%, 80%, 50%, but I want you to make an honest effort in solving it, and it will show in your presentation.
Hmm.
It will show in your presentation, not by the fanciness of your slides, but the content on your slides.
Yeah.
As somebody who has worked for 19, 20 years, I would be able to tell you whether this is textbook or whether you have actually worked, something on the ground. So, I would want you to uh, honest with be honest with yourself. Put all you've got here, because this is something, if you do well, can prepare you for your future.
Yeah.
So most of the times when I talk to my direct reportees, most of the times they have complaints about the youngest ones in the team, right? They say, she doesn't understand, she doesn't know, she doesn't have experience. I mean, unless you give her work, she will never learn, right? That is one thing. But you will not have that luxury, say, in a startup, right? In an established organization, people will give you a learning curve, right?
Hmm.
In a startup, they expect you to know on day one, right? They hire you because they think you know what has to be done, right? So
Yeah.
this will help you prepare. This will help you not looking lost when you start out on your careers or in your career progression. So I want each one of them to take it very seriously, and it's okay. I mean, do not stress out. It's okay. It's okay if you don't get it right? But give it a real, honest attempt. Is what my expectation.
And we got to learn a lot of things from you. And actually, it was a very, very informative interview for me.
Okay, glad I could help.
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us for this
Thank
so
you,
much of
Sona.
time and giving us a lot of valuable time of yours. I know you would be very busy, but still, it is wonderful having you with us.
Thank you, Sona. Thank you for the opportunity. It was wonderful talking to somebody who's who's young and who's vivacious. And I wish you all the best in your life. And glad speaking to you. Yeah. Hope you engage more.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Sona. Bye.